what's been the hardest bit about being disruptive or being on your own or kind of challenging the status quo?
Who wants to start?
Yeah. I mean, definitely a lot of people will think you're crazy. You know, particularly like when you go on the fundraising thing, just to carry on, you go cap in hand to people. You know, I mean, our industry is still majority women. You know, the amount of investors who said, oh, you know, my wife makes the fashion decisions and things like that. And, you know, it was, yeah, it's kind of, you will get rejected a lot. Again, every company goes through this, but if you're trying to do something new, people will disbelieve you. You know, when the industry went through fads, when it was like flash sales, everyone's like, oh, you're going to fail because you're not doing flash sales, or you're going to fail because you're not doing this flavor of the month sort of thing. And you're there thinking, like, this is really obvious. Like, you're pointing to this and saying, this is a water bottle. And people are saying, no, I think that's a telephone. And you're like, no, you can't see, but like, it's like having those conversations over and over again every day.
Does anyone see that as a telephone? Anyone that disruptive? Azmat?
Yeah, I mean, we went into a space that, if you ask most people, you think, again, taking Google as an example, that it's like you've got a big, extremely competent, clever company doing it. And yeah, I mean, if I look back and think, if you met me 5-6 years ago, I would say, yeah, we're going to do a much better job than Google. And knowing what I knew back then, I knew nothing back then. I'm surprised I had that, you know, again, to use your word, boldness. But you need a bit of that. And this very strange way I thought about it is I thought, hey, since everyone is afraid of Google, no one else is going to do anything. And what I find surprising about the space is it's such a massive space, and there's like so few players. And so weirdly enough, you take your disadvantage and you make it into your advantage. Sure, you have Google as a competitor, but you don't actually have many others. And then you can find your niche. And for us, that was mobility and public transportation. And weirdly enough, now if we speak to Google or Apple, they sort of say to us that, you know, you guys know what you're doing, and they even, you know, admit to, you know, taking inspiration from us. So, you know, I definitely don't think you should worry too much about the competitive landscape, but it is important to think about how you're different, how you're unique, and how you tell the story to investors and to your users about your offering.
Have you had those discussions with LinkedIn, Pip?
I mean, I mean, when we started, I mean, going after LinkedIn sounds like madness, and I have, you know, raising funds is very hard, but it's funny to see how investors come around to the idea when they start seeing you executing what you've said you're going to do. I think to kind of answer your question, what was the hardest thing for me? Definitely raising funds is just, I think it's hard for any founder, but I think that what I hate about it is you're just spending time raising investment, which you're not spending on your business, which is particularly hard when you're in those early days. It gets easier in the later days because you do have a brilliant executive team that can drive things through for you. But in those early days when you're trying to grow a business and raise investment simultaneously, and the reality is it is particularly hard for women. So at the moment here in the UK, only 9% of angel investment goes to women. And at my level, so we raised a 4 million round a year ago, and it's only 2.3%. And that's just the reality. Things are changing. There's definitely more appetite from investors, but it's back to your thing, you know, investors tend to invest in things that they understand, and they tend to invest in traits that they think are, I guess, strength traits, but they're not necessarily. So here's a perfect example. When I was raising investment, I'm now reverse mentoring a number of VCs, and they'll throw a question at you that is slightly tangential to your business, and what they're looking for is like a dogmatic leader that's wedded to their vision. So they're looking for you to say, no, that's a stupid idea because of this, this, and this. But on average, as women, we will, and there's outliers on each side, we'll tend to synthesize an idea, go away, think about it, and then we're decisive. But we're actually being marked down in those initial pitches because they don't think we're decisive in the room. And I actually think it makes us great leaders when we take on board ideas, but then we're decisive.
And innovate with them. Sukhi, for yourself, what's been the hardest bit?
Yeah, so I'd probably reiterate what Pip said. So fundraising was super hard. So we bootstrapped the entire business, even the previous businesses that we had. So I put all of my savings into that. MarketOrders is 2.5 years old. That's been bootstrapped to date, but it got to a point where we thought we did need external funding. So about a year ago, we did actually raise £250,000 from a small VC fund. And that process probably took about 3 months. And when all you're thinking about is raising, and then you finally get an offer on the table of £250,000, and then 2 weeks later I actually ended up walking away from the deal. So I did what was the only logical thing: spend 3 days in bed with Netflix, eating a lot of ice cream, and just sort of soothing myself, because everyone around me at that point in time just said it's the silliest thing you can ever do to turn down money from a VC. But I think you shouldn't be afraid of turning money down just because someone gives you funds. That's not the be end, or that's not the end goal. I think today maybe the problem we have is there's a lot of emphasis and cheerleading for founders and entrepreneurs that raise money, but what about building a business that is sustainable and really creating value? And I think sometimes there's just too much focus on, this company raised X amount of money. So it is very difficult to raise. I had to really ask myself important questions like, do I want to take this money? And the reason I turned it down was because the VC's values were really not aligned with the values of my team or with my business. So, there's another quote I love, which is making an easy decision in the short term actually leads to a difficult sort of future in the long term. And making difficult decisions in the short term will make things easier in the long term. So turning down that money, I turned it down just because it didn't align with my values and those of my business. But during that year, I've just become a lot more resilient and a lot more stronger. I went on to have over 100 meetings with other angel investors over a 3-month period. Last July, I won £100,000 in a pitch competition, and now my team and I are going to fundraise £500,000 on Crowdcube. So this is crowdfunding, and the reason I've now decided to go through the crowdfunding route is because I feel it gives me a lot more control and more control over the way I want to execute my fundraise. So I think just don't be afraid to walk away from what might be the obvious solution. Everyone around you will always say, take the money, but it's only you as a founder, you'll know whether or not it's the right thing. And I think that comes down to just being very bold and having that resilience, because, turning down £250,000 is not easy to do. The very easy choice is just to take the money. But I'm looking back in hindsight, I'm really glad that I did do it.
It has to be the right money from the right people. Right? You need the two bits. It's not just about having the cash in hand.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. You're talking about crowdsourcing as well. We're crowdsourcing questions. So if any of you want to pose any questions, hashtag #BLDisruptors is the hashtag that we're using, and I can see what's up there on the screen. We're not going to talk about funding the entire time, but I want to pick up on a question that did come in on the Twitter from Kaizen Health Screen, which is asking, how did the panel members go about deciding when to raise money for their business? Because it's not just about having the right money, but it's also about the timing of when to go for that, when to invest those 3 months in kind of scaling up and getting money in. So how did you decide when?
I think what you said was amazing. I mean, literally raising investment is like going into a marriage, but without the benefit of make-up sex. So I think most importantly to ask yourself is, do you really need to raise investment? I think a lot of businesses run to raise investment because they think that's something that you should do. There's loads of brilliant businesses that haven't raised investment. I mean, in my situation, I'm on a mission to take on LinkedIn. I have to be realistic. I will be raising investment probably for the next 2 years for the rest of my life. But I think when it came, the decision that came for me was very much about what we call product market fit. So so this is my second tech business. I exited a tech business in Australia, which I scaled in Australia. And I think I didn't want to take on investment until I felt like I had product market fit here in the UK and that the business was working here in the UK. So I used the money from my previous exit. I reinvested that in here, to the British business. And a number of my team in Australia relocated from Australia to help me start up again. My husband, he asked me how much money was left in my Australian bank account. and I'm too scared to tell them because I basically spent the lot on seed. But I backed it myself, and I wanted to get it to the business to a point where I had clients, we were making money, and that I knew when I was taking on investment that it was as de-risked as I possibly could make it. I then knew that I needed that investment to scale up the tech side of the business and the business side. But for me, it was about getting to product market fit. I think it's really important to get to product market fit before you take on VC investment. You can take on angel to help you get to product market fit, but do not take on VC money until you're at product market fit, because that's going to be a very scary journey for you.
So I just add, we self-funded as well, so I put all of my savings into the businesses, even from the previous one. And with MarketOrders, we're now specifically raising money for exponential growth. So we do also have product market fit now. We have customers in the UK. We have suppliers around the world. So now we've just at that point where we just need an X amount of money to really push it to the next stage. So I would also say, you know, getting VC funding, it's not easy to do, but it's also something that that shouldn't be the first thing that you do, because also the earlier that you raise funds, the more of your business you do end up giving away as well. So I think if you're at a very seed or early stage, you would be expected to give a lot of equity away. And if you're okay with that, then that's okay. But for myself and my co-founder, we really wanted to get to a stage where we knew exactly what we were doing, and we do know. And now when the money comes in, it's rocket fuel for us to take us to the next stage.
Fantastic. And you're all talking about a lot of vision that you've been able to kind of have for your businesses, for the problem that you're trying to disrupt. A question has come in here from Arani Logan. Are you where you thought you would be today compared to 5 years ago? And where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Almost like an interview question.
Yeah, so I think definitely in many ways not where we thought. I think to be an entrepreneur, you probably have to have a unhealthy degree of self-deception or delusion. Yeah. So I looked at like the early business plans, and it was like, oh, this within 5 years it would all be retired. But no, I think curious thing is, like, in terms of the things we set out to achieve in 2010, we're actually still on that path. A lot of the details about how we've achieved that or how we go about it have changed as we've learned more. So actually very early on, we were big into social commerce, thinking that people could search through recommendations from other people. That was kind of the flavor of 2010 and 11, and that was zero product market fit there. And then actually more on the search side, that's when we saw the business begin to take off and really get strong signs of product market fit. So ended up spending a lot of time thinking about how to make the search better and better and better, because that's where the market told us there was a big need. And actually more recently, the market's sort of telling us actually there's sort of need in other parts of this sort of fashion shopping experience, and we go deeper there. But I think, just as I said, like that graph of the highs and lows is kind of a universal truism. I think, again, another universal truism is it always takes you longer than you think it will. And your first idea is very rarely the right one, unless you're incredibly lucky or incredibly good. I mean, I also, believe in this idea. I think we mentioned that, Uber is not started by a taxi driver. Like, you need this sort of naivety to see something afresh, but that naivety cuts both ways. You're going to see things very differently, but that means you're also going to make like every rookie mistake under the sun. So I think it does take longer, which again is why you need that resilience. But again, this concept of product market fit that we've all been talking about, which if you don't know what that means, I really recommend reading a number of books about it. Like, you basically try a bunch of things until you get these early signs that the product you're building is a fit with the market that you're going for. And once you get that, you'll see the things begin to take off, and there's sort of a lot of different ways you can measure that. But yeah, that sometimes takes longer. I mean, even with a business like PayPal, their plan A didn't work, their plan B didn't work. The PayPal that sold whenever it was their plan G. And they had the tenacity, and actually look at the people, the PayPal mafia as they're called, they've all gone on to do pretty amazing things because they had that.
Yeah. Got 26 plans, and then you go on to after that. So I've taken a couple of questions there from Twitter. We do have a roving mic, and there are a couple of you here in London. So I want to go to, where is the mic? There we go. So maybe we can start there, closer to where you are, Mr. Mike. There we go, thank you. say your name, maybe your business, give it a shout out, and then your question.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name's Geneva. I used to work at MTV in Sydney with Pip, and I have observed you from afar for many years, so it's great to see you back in the UK and starting the dots. I just wanted to ask about the loop, because I sort of, seeing you from afar, working at MTV in that kind of really dynamic environment, and then having this need, working around freelancers to create it in the first place. How did you decide to let it go? What was that whole process? Because I think we've talked a lot about, businesses kind of needing to come up with the next solution. How did you make that decision when it was you did have a big community and it was a pretty big network?
Yeah, so just so you know the history, I started, I guess, a baby sister version of the Dots called The Loop in Australia, which I started with a co-founder called Matt. So yeah, the challenge was actually that, to be completely honest, is me and Matt wanted to take the business in different directions. So we got to product market fit in Australia, got to profitability in Australia, and we suddenly realized that Matt wanted a lifestyle business and I wanted global domination. So very long story short, has anyone been through a co-founder kind of separation in this room? Okay, I'll give you a hug later. But very long story short, the only way to kind of resolve those two different visions was to exit. So I exited the business, but I kind of acquired the technology rights to roll it out internationally, and then with that money that I made in Australia, I then reinvested. So I would have loved to have taken the Loop. It would have saved me a bit of time the whole way, but it just wasn't. And I guess the huge thing I learned about that was Matt's an amazing guy. What we didn't do as co-founders, there were two things we got wrong. One, we never actually spoke about what we wanted long term. Matt wanted a lifestyle business. That's awesome. If you want a lifestyle business, that's brilliant, but that wasn't compatible with my vision for the for the business. And I think the other thing we got wrong is we had very similar skill sets, and that gets very challenging. So if you are, by the way, I love being a sole founder, and I will never go back to being a co-founder. I have godparents, I have a brilliant executive team, all of which have shares, but I'm mama and they're godparents. But if you do have a co-founder, just make sure you have very different skill sets, because the problem is that becomes a bit challenging over time.
A lot of the times there are the sort of parental, analogies with co-founders, and it's a bit like two people getting married without having had the chat about, like, do you want kids? Or
yeah,
not?
exactly,
exactly. Sort of something
I fucked that one up. I'm sorry. I didn't have the global domination chat, basically.
Another question from the audience? Maybe just here, and then we'll come over to this side.
Hi there, my name's Drew Rogers, and I'm the founder of My Language Lab. My question is it's actually to anyone on the panel. How did you go about finding a CTO? Because I'm at the stage where we're talking about skill sets, and I'm quite apprehensive about taking that step, because this is my baby, this is what I've created. And to entrust someone with that responsibility. I've also got to make it appealing enough. So how did you go about finding a suitable CTO?
So I think, the first thing is make sure that you definitely need one. And I'm sure that you've done that, but there are other solutions. If you're a technology business, should that CTO be a co-founder? Or if technology is just one of the things you need, maybe they can be an employee. For us, our business is a technology platform. So my co-founder was a CTO. The one that I mentioned that left me at the altar was a CTO, and then the one who I found subsequently was. And there's a large data component to the business, and I thought that the best framework to work with the data set was going to be sort of Python and Django. So I just kind of lurked on some Python Django forums and sort of waited for people to say what I thought were sensible things, and then just emailed those people, and sort of fairly persistent, and that was just got very lucky that I found the right person. But with all hiring, it is and this is actually think about how I spent my morning today. Probably spent half of the morning today hiring. A lot of it is just going through LinkedIn. Going deep into the networks, nurturing those networks, doing lots of outreach, but through mutual connections, trying to get sort of the warm introductions and selling the vision to the people, the team who are the obviously people who can make it happen. So you're always hiring, but I think it's like a CEO founder thing, and it's about being scrappy and finding those pools of talent. Whether we've hired designers from small design communities like Dribbble or Behance back when they were tiny, or thinking where might the ideal CTO be hanging out, and then targeting there.
I'm like a single founder. And do you have a software? Is it a technical company?
Yeah, so we match up students who need to pass language exams with tutors. So we're quite niche in that respect.
Well, if your company is going to be technical, it's going to be a software company, then it's going to be very important that you build a community of engineers internally. You have to figure out who that leader should be. My situation was a bit half-half because I'm technical, but I wasn't really going to be programming. And so, I started off with myself, with a lot. It was kind of like, early days. But what I did was I surrounded myself with a lot of good engineers. Instead of having one CTO, I sort of ended up with a few CTOs by just thinking more creatively about the organization. But the specific thing I did was I took the mission of what we were doing, and I tried to find people that were very much into it. So it's kind of a niche, right? Public transport, data, buses, and found people that specifically loved the niche and used that as a way to connect and speak to people and build. Like initially, when I had 10 people, they were basically all engineers and me. It's because I felt it was very important to build a very technical team.
In the early days, I did a try before you buy approach, so I don't have obviously a technical co-founder, but actually all of my senior tech team started as contractors, and then I convinced them to join me full time. It's probably slightly a risky approach because you have to then convince them to join full time. I liked it because it was literally, it's try before you buy. You get to know them. They get to know you. The other thing for us is, we wanted to find engineers that wanted to build code that would have a positive impact on the world. So I literally just went hunting for engineers that in bios said, I want to build code to have a positive impact on the world, and then contacted them that way because that, again, it was that values alignment. And then I'd get them as in contractors, give them about 3 to 6 months, and then if I like them, then convert them to full-time with share options.
Okay, and questions on this side? Yeah, just here. With the white shirt. Yeah, there we go.
Thank you. Hello, guys. My name is François. I have just, can I ask 2 questions or 1 question?
Just one.
I don't want.
Just one.
Oh, okay. How you guys build your team, basically? I think it's not easy to... for example, I try to create something as well, but the thing is, it's hard to find the team, the good team. I mean, is it your friends or you post the job online, or how you build a team, the very good team, I mean?
Very, very tough question. How do you find the people, right?
I think the most important thing, exactly what you said, the most important thing any founder can do is build and retain a world-class team. So most of my role is either hiring people or making sure people in the business are happy. And that's basically what I do most of the time. Yeah. So, you find people everywhere. Obviously, I'm biased, join the dots. We're good at UI, UX, front end. We're shit at back end, so don't go to us for that. But sorry, I'm going to stop swearing. Sorry.
Thanks, Pip.
Anyway, but yeah, I think you've just got to get very, very good at building and retaining a team and building a culture around that team and making that team happy, because right now it's full employment out there. So the competition for talent is so fierce. And you're not going to, as a founder, be able to compete with Google or Facebook in terms of salary. They're just going to outpitch you. So what you have to bring is you have to bring values alignment. So they've got to believe in your mission and what you're trying to achieve. They will stay with you for that. You've got to make them happy at work. And happiness is very different to lots of other people. So that's why I would suggest doing like happiness surveys. But you've got to give them more than just pay, because if you just compete on pay, they'll flip and they'll move to the next tech company as soon as another tech company spends them more. But get very good at management, I guess.
Yeah. Where do you find these, other than on the dots, where do you find these people?
So with us, the 4 sort of core team members of MarketOrders, we actually came about in a really different way. We all did martial arts together. So we figured out if we could, kick and punch each other and still be able to talk, we'd probably be able to work really well together. And I think that's like the sports analogy is really good, because if you can get on really well playing sports, sports is all about fair play, rules and regulations. And if you can respect those, then you're probably going to work really well together as a team. But when we expanded from 4 people, now we're up to 11, we actually went through looking through recommendations. So, don't underestimate the power of your network. Ask people that you know, and if there's, we use LinkedIn as well, we will be using the dots, but just sort of scour the place. I used to go to a lot of meetups on Eventbrite and meetup.com, just talking to people and just trying to sort of figure out if they're looking for a role. And of course, tell people, don't be afraid to say, I am looking for this particular type of person, and do you know anyone who could help me? And most people are very generous and they want to help. And I think that sometimes, I find it really difficult to ask for help. I found it very difficult, when I was fundraising, I would tell people about my idea, but I wouldn't say the killer line, do you want to invest? So I'd always walk away without saying that. So just don't be afraid to ask. And if you can, try out the person before, look at the other projects that they've done before, ask them to submit samples. And what we do now is we actually ask those people to work with us for 3 months or so, on a part-time basis, and look at the work that they bring and see if their energy really aligns with us. So that's what we did.
I mean, one other thing on the early employees is not only do they have to help, co-create that vision and deliver that vision, also they're going to be an integral part of the culture of your company. And it's really difficult to change the culture once it's set. So, you hire somebody that they're, your 4th employee, that's 25% of your culture there. And actually there was, Reed Hastings, who built Netflix, he started a business prior to that. And, one of his early employees was actually his chief people officer. And basically he said to her, we need to do this again. We kind of messed up the culture of our first company. And from the very beginning, we need to go and really think what are the values, and that's kind of what gave rise to, or gave birth to this sort of Netflix culture deck, which you should definitely check out if you hadn't, because they were very explicit in saying these are the things we care about, these are the things we don't care about. And again, those early employees will really help set the tone, either for the better or for the worse. So it's kind of a very high bar for that.
Your culture is the average of the people that you have in your team, right? So unfortunately, we've run out of time. No? 5 more minutes, thank you very much, that's what we did. Final 2 questions. So one here, and then one right at the back over there.
Oh, he's got his own pointer.
A question to all of you. My name is Dimitris. Are there any unique challenges for a founder with a non-technical background, not in computer science, when he tries to disrupt digital industries?
I mean, it's, both answers are correct here, which is, I think some of my peers have mentioned that to disrupt industry, you have to know nothing about it, because you can have a fresh take on it. On the other hand, it helps a lot to be technical, to be in a technical industry. And if you're not, that doesn't mean you can't do it, but you have to find either a CTO or build a great technical team around you, people that you trust and really become like your family. And so it's really hard to give a direct right answer. And I think, back to even the previous question about team, I think it's very reported how messy and how crazy the whole initial period of team building is. I don't think people talk about this so much, about what a mess it is. And I think it really separates the people that become entrepreneurs from those that don't, because nobody talks about it. It's such a mess. And then if you do manage to get through it somehow, your founder leaves, or you think, all of us have been through stuff. And so many answers are actually just perseverance. I mean, you may say I'm not technical, but if you do something for 18 months, you'll be an expert at it. So it just really depends on how badly you want it. Means you'll figure out a way to become better at it than you think you are right now.
Okay, right at the top there. Sorry, making you work for it.
Just a question for Azmat or anyone. What's your key? What sort of key stories, or what would you say was pivotal for your company in terms of growing from user base from 1 to 100 users to 10,000 to 100,000? What experience or what stories do you have in terms of scaling? Because there's all this talk about product market fit and raise money, but we know that doesn't correlate in terms of growing your business. What was sort of really insightful, useful in terms of growing your business?
Yeah, I get asked that a bunch. I have two different stories here. One was the easy one, which was the first bus app. You know, with the first bus app, it was weird. It was just like this silly website, and I think we just like tweeted it. We're like, hey, here's a bus website, and you can just tap on it. It'll show you buses, and it was like instantaneous. There was people retweeting it. And they were like, hey, yeah, make this into an app. So that was a story of like how an experiment of just like asking the world, hey, this silly thing we made, do you want us to kind of build this out? Resulted in a very instantaneous positive reaction. The story there is if you can find a very bare bone way of testing your concept and putting out there and just saying, and there are much better tools now. I mean, all we did was tweet and have a website say, what do you think? But surprisingly, for whatever reason, when Citymapper, the app started, people would be surprised. It was just kind of hanging out for a while. It was like flat. You know, we did a bunch of iterations. It was really weird. At one point, the bus app was like this, and Citymapper, the complete everything app, was like this. So anybody with any rational sense would be like, this is not working. You should just kind of split this into a bus app and a tube app and a train app, and then, you know. And for whatever reason, we were just kind of a bit insane. We're like, no, we're going to kind of keep doing this because we believe in it. But that was it. There was no evidence. I mean, it was just like, we were just like, look, who wants to have multiple different types of apps to just kind of keep at this and make this whole thing work? And at some point, you know, it's going to work. It's no better answer than that. But I remember what I did was like, you know, we had emails coming and there were still few users, and we just read every single one and just try and get clues. Get a sense of what's working and what's not, look at the data, and just kept doing massive iterations. So you could do that on mobile, just update the app, update it again, try this, and just keep making it better and better. And what I noticed is it just kept getting better. There are more users every day, and they're writing more emails, they're asking for more stuff. In fact, they were finding more problems. If people don't care, they say nothing. If people care, they actually tell you what's wrong. So it was like, I was like, oh my God, everything is so bad, everyone's complaining. But that actually meant that people cared. So you just find your channel to your customer, listen very closely. Either you get lucky very early, you get a clue. And if you don't, then it's really your own bet. You believe in something, you keep at it until you get that clue again.
Okay, fantastic. So I think that's a fantastic note to end on. So I'd like everyone to join me in thanking our panel. I hope you all enjoyed that. Watching the Twitter has been fantastic to kind of see some of the highlights that people have been taking, many more questions being posed. So I hope you'll be able to join them on Twitter. But we will also be joining for drinks outside here. Before we do that, there is a feedback form which Jess is going to wave for us. Thank you very much. For you all to fill in. We can only, you know, get better. Be passionate. Care. Hopefully you care about it. You spent your evening here. Let us know how that was, how you found it, and you can hand in your feedback forms to members of the British Library team who will be by the doors, but there's also a feedback form box just outside. If you do fill it in, there is a prize draw tonight, so we've got 3 copies of Sukhi's book to give away, and there's also a Citymapper goodie bag with goodies in it. Woo! There we go. And then finally, a marketing class down at the BL IPC as well for free. So do fill it in. It will be very much worth your while. This, as I said at the beginning, has been part of the season of Digital Disruption in partnership with the London Growth Hub here. And there are brochures, or there'll be brochures just outside for what's happening in the rest of the season. Also, of course, the British Library and IP Centre has been here. A great resource, actually, as mentioned by members of the panel. And that continues to happen. Of note, if anyone wants 10 grand worth of bespoke growth-focused consultancy, applications for the next intake of Innovating for Growth are opened February 6th and run until March 14 for anyone who is London-based. I wanted to round up with some of the highlights, big things for people to take away. Dyslexia is a superpower. There we go. Take up martial arts to find your team. Life is all about ups and downs. Yeah, it is the first, right? Life is all about ups and downs, but most importantly, you can start your business here at the British Library.
Free
there
Wi-Fi.
you go. There is free Wi-Fi, if nothing else. I want to thank everyone that joined us on the webcast and on Periscope, but also at the other locations that we had. Thank you again for spending your Monday evenings with all of us. And I want to close on a quote from Emily Dickinson: "Fortune befriends the bold." That one didn't land as well as I maybe be bold or italic, but don't be regular.
Hey.
Oh, yes.
Hey, there we go. Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Monday evening.